Environmental crimes. The necessity towards more stringent environmental law. The simplest definition of a crime is an activity that society prohibits and one against which society is willing to enforce as criminal code. Yet this definition doesn't define what society does deem as a criminal act. Acts against the environment considered criminal cover a range of acts such as groundwater contamination, improper waste disposal, oil spills, destruction of wetlands, improper handling of pesticides or toxic chemicals, dumping into the ocean, and falsifying lab data pertaining to environmental regulations, to just name a few. In recent years, human-induced climate and environmental change has caused extreme concern. Our planet and biodiversity is of vital importance as it supports survival of all human beings' dependency upon it. It is the only home of mankind, making it the most important aspect of our life. The wellness of our environment directly relates to the health of humans and every other species known. The environment is so unique to our lifestyle, it is now even regarded within the economy. Preventing environmental crimes are not only beneficial to the environment and society, but preventing pollution of life-sustaining resources such as water catchments, oceans, and the air allows sustainable development for the economy. Until the early 1970s, environmental offences were almost unheard of, until the prosecutors rediscovered the Refuse Act's strict liability provisions. Examining corporate environmental crime poses certain challenges investigating corporate crime rates, as criminologists are less familiar with all of the environmental data. Environmental crime is a relatively new legal concept that covers a wide range of illegal activity by individuals and organisations. The Earth Summit Objectives. The international political response to climate change began at the Rio Earth Summit in 1992, where the Rio Convention included the adoption of the UN Framework on Climate Change. The Convention set out a framework for action aimed at stabilising atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gases to avoid dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. The United Nations Framework on Climate Change now has a membership of 195 nations. In 2015, COP21, known as the Paris Climate Conference, is the first time in over 20 years of United Nations negotiations to achieve a legally binding and universal agreement on climate of keeping global warming below 2 degrees. Local air pollutants are defined as those which have a direct impact on the locality of emission, ranging in dangerous consequences such as smog, blackened buildings, and respiratory. Air pollution is caused by sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, and fine particulate matter. The primary source of sulfur dioxide emissions are electricity generation by power stations, and the second largest amount being the industry. In 2009, the European Environmental Agency released that 70% of sulfur dioxide emissions were from energy production and distribution, a huge difference from the 13% occurring from energy use and only 9% from the commercial and household sector. Sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide are main contributors of acid rain and can have a significant regional impact and cause changes in soil and water quality. Subsequently, the impacts of acid deposition can be significant with adverse effects on the aquatic ecosystems, in rivers and lakes, and damage to forest crops and other vegetation. The single largest source of nitrogen oxide and carbon monoxide is road transport. Emissions of particulate matter PM10 and carbon dioxide is fairly evenly distributed from transport, the industry, and power stations with no single dominant source of emission. Carbon dioxide is a pollutant with no local impacts but believed to be responsible for approximately 60% of anthropogenic-induced global warming. The necessity of the objectives and enforcement by the government. UK water industry faces a number of water quality issues which are met with capital spent on treating raw water in order to meet the regulatory standards. Other policies also exist that require improved water quality, such as the Water Framework Directive, aiming to deal with issues at the source as opposed to relying on exclusively end-of-pipe treatment solutions. Allowing communication between criminal and environmental data will provide opportunities for advancing the discussion of corporate crime rates. Recognising the features of corporate offending and environmental crime measurement is important for several reasons. For example, environmental crime rates would provide standardised examination of environmental offending. Records over time then can determine whether any shifts in environmental performance are due to changes within a company or the individuals in it. In addition, Comparing the predictors of a violation counts and crime rates can provide insight into whether environmental performance is largely a result of opportunity or some criminogenic element. Effective prevention of environmental crime requires altering beliefs, knowledge, and attitudes of local communities. Communication between legal and environmental organisations would create enforced protection of the environment. It is urgent that these criminal offences are dealt with in order to maintain the desperate hope to meet the UN agreement and prevent massive harm to human and ecosystem health.